We just thought we'd draw your attention to the wet weather overnight. I mean, we're talking particularly wet, so does that mean summer's officially over? Did summer officially start? Did it? There's a few nice days here and there, but let's find out what this means. Let's go to Jim Dale. Jim's a senior meteorologist at the at British Weather Services. With all of this, Jim, a lot of people will be waking up, as we did this morning, to a bit of a shock that it's very wet out there.
Yeah, it is. It's ugly. Not everywhere. You've got to put this into context. But yesterday wasn't a great day. There's some not so nice pictures of Dunstable, Luton area really underwater. And to be frank with you, the area of low pressure, which is sitting over southern Suffolk at the moment, that's slow moving, and there is amber warnings out there. So it's a threat to life. There's yellow warnings as well. I think the amber warning is slightly further north than it should be, actually. I think the areas of concern, again, are going to be Buckinghamshire, Bedfordshire, into Surrey and Bedfordshire yesterday. Those general areas saw 45 millimetres of rain in a single day. It's going to be added to today. So by the end of today, in those areas, and probably a little bit beyond that into London as well, the general total for 48 hours is going to exceed something in the region of 70 millimetres. So you can see it's our turn. Now, I'm not suggesting for 1 second these floods are going to be anything like that we've seen in Europe, which have been absolutely devastating. And not just Europe, but in places in Africa, in North Carolina, in the United States. I could go on day after day after day. These things are occurring. So it is our turn now. We'll see if we can get through this one, hopefully unscathed.
Where are we with the water table? Because it seems to me like, yes, we've had an awful lot of water, but it's already not really got very much space to go to. This morning at the drive-in, we were discussing earlier.
To be honest with you,
really
I went. I've got a local wood next to me, and I was walking it the other day and seeing how dry it was in actual fact.
Oh, okay.
Because the southeast, particularly, had been dry for some time. But no, you're right. Once you get 70, 80 millimetres of rain, or even half of that amount, the water tables rise very quickly. Particularly this time of year when you've got that sort of, I say concrete. Yeah, the concrete areas don't absorb water very well anyway. That's one of the problems that we've now got. But even wooded areas, they'll sit on top. The water table might not necessarily be high, but it will sit on top. And you've got another problem as well, of course, and that's river levels burgeoning quite quickly, and in which case you do get the overspill. So you can see the pictures you're showing now. And one thing I would say today is, don't drive into a swollen road because you will not come out of it very easily. Your car can be easily taken by this amount of rainfall and the water flow that accrues. So the amber warning's out there for a good reason. It really is, but I think it's slightly further south than the Met Office have got at this moment in time.
Okay, top tip.
Why is it happening though, Jim? Why so much rain?
Good question. I'm glad you asked it, Eamon. Why so much rain globally is simply because the oceans have been warmed up by global warming, climate change, to record levels. That's the Mediterranean, it's the Adriatic, it's the Black Sea, it's the Atlantic. It's what you'll see when Hurricane Helene forms in the Gulf of Mexico, 30 degrees in the Gulf of Mexico, 28 to 30 degrees, the sea temperature. So there's your energy. That goes into the atmosphere. The atmosphere then can then hold more water. It's assessed to be around 7% higher than it was even 10 years ago. So, that's one of the reasons why we're seeing these huge downpours. So those who poo-poo climate change, I'd say openly on this programme, they're wrong. They're wrong, completely wrong. They're deceivers and deniers, and they need to get their act together. I'm not saying what we're seeing in the UK today is necessarily climate driven. We will wait until the aftermath, because that's what you've got to do, and pick up the pieces. Scientists will look at it and suggest whether or not the rain we're seeing now is in addition to what we might have ordinarily seen, say, 20, 30 years ago. But certainly what's going on around the world, and the European floods of late, which were devastating, definitely part of the equation of climate change. So I think the deniers, the deceivers have got nowhere to run.
OK, Jim, thank you very much.
Appreciate it, Jim.
This morning. You'll have got lots of our audience listening and engaged this morning. Appreciate it. And we had the royal family, I think the King, over the weekend, sending his best wishes to all of those being caught up in these European floods, which have been really devastating and claiming lives there.
Now, the government is going to introduce a new eco-tax. This is going to happen in 4 years' time, and it will encourage the uptake of greener technologies.
Around 50% of all household waste which councils collect is burned every year in facilities that produce the same greenhouse gases as 3 million homes.
But despite efforts to make Britain greener, there are concerns that incineration tax will cost as much as £6.5 billion by 2036.
Well, we're going to debate this morning, and we're joined by environmental scientist and commentator Professor Christian Dunn from Bangor University and the co-founder of Climate Debate UK, Ben Pyle.
Could I just start with you, because we're talking about £6 billion by a certain date. Who pays for that ultimately? Because if I've read this correctly, we pay for that as taxpayers.
Yeah, that's right. Households will pay that, and businesses will pay that, and schools, hospitals, and the rest of it will pay that through their charges. We're already taxed quite heavily as it happens already. We pay about 2% of GDP. The environmental taxes that we pay are equivalent to about 2% of GDP. And all these schemes have really done in the past. I think if viewers can remember, if they were council taxpayers in the 2000s, they'll remember that what the directives imposed on the UK by the European Union stopped waste going to landfill. Probably quite rightly. I mean, nobody wants to live near a landfill, and it's not a great thing to do for the environment. But there were taxes at the time of £100 per tonne, if I remember rightly, and that led councils to have to sort of impose many more restrictions on the way they processed waste. So we got these sort of multiplications of wheelie bins in our front gardens, and it also increased council tax, and it degraded the level of service that we had from our councils. So collections were started to change from once a week to once every fortnight in many cases.
All right, we get the picture there. We get the picture overall, Ben. Professor, what would you like to add to that?
Well, the issue is we need to cut emissions. So I welcome any action which is based around cutting the emissions. My concern here is very much like a lot of, as you're calling them, eco tariffs, is that the person that pays is the end user. And arguably that is not the right thing to do. If we're serious about cutting emissions, we can't just stick taxes onto things at the end. What we have to do is think holistically about this. We have to think structurally differently in terms of societally thinking differently there. And we need to start looking at making the polluter pay. The issue here is we have too much waste. That's the issue. And a lot of that waste is packaging and unnecessary plastic, often waste, which is being produced by manufacturers and encouraged by organizations like supermarkets. Those are the areas that we should be hitting rather than just whacking, if you want to call it a tax, whatever it may be, at the end user. It's not the right way to go about it. And just speaks people's back though.
I totally agree. I was reading this morning and I just thought, why are we so short-sighted? This is a man-made problem and our solution is to make us all pay more for it. Yeah. Surely the answer is, I don't need all of my fruit and vegetables wrapped in plastic. I don't need every single box that comes from Amazon to have 6,000 bits of paper inside it. We need to produce less rubbish and then we don't have to burn it and we don't have to pay for it either. Why are we so short-sighted? I don't understand. And all it does is make people anti-eco concepts because they see that they're having to pay for it, and then we do more harm to the environment as well.
Well, people aren't wrapping things in plastic for fun. I mean, there's actually quite minimal amounts of plastic covering most items.
Of course they are. Of course they're wrapping them for fun. They're there for presentation. Most of the stuff is not needed.
If you buy premium products, then for sure they're more likely to be presented in that way. But for most things, a packet of biscuits or a loaf of bread, it's just covered in the minimum, or most meats. If you get the butchers, just get them in a plastic bag. If you want to find out, if you want to look at alternatives to that, you also have to consider them the material resource inputs to that. And it turns out that covering things in paper or waxed paper or cotton, those famous tote bags that people like to sort of wear to show their eco credentials, they're actually more resource intensive, and reusable things, although they sound very good. It turns out that cleaning them, making them hygienic for reuse, uses more resources by way of energy and disposing of the water than the plastic does. So actually, plastic is a very efficient way of preserving things and keeping things clean, and brings enormous benefits. It's very easy to sort of say that this is a problem, that there's an overabundance of plastic, but that needs a comparison. That claim needs a comparison.
Why does our milk need to be in plastic? There's so many examples I can think of. I mean, Professor,
what would you
do you
put it
think
in?
of it all? Well, glass.
I think it's an easy argument to say that plastics helps us loads, and of course it does. And this is the problem here. This is not an easy thing to discuss or sort out. Plastic is not bad. It's allowed us to have modern life, but there is without doubt a necessary use of plastic. And it's not even in just packaging. Look at our white goods. They are designed to last 2 years, and then you cannot mend them. It's all of this has been built into our society. And don't get me wrong, we need consumerism, obviously, but there needs to be responsible consumerism.
Okay.
There needs to be responsible use.
Just finally and briefly, Professor, first of all, tax or no tax?
Tax in the right place, not for just the end user.
Yeah, Ben?
No tax.
Okay. Gentlemen, thank you both very much indeed. Much appreciated. Thank you very much indeed. Talk about the job of councils and waste. Yesterday I noticed, I pulled into services yesterday, and on the slip road out there are a lot of articulated lorries parked. Obviously the guys are sleeping in them, whatever. But behind them, it's all this mattresses and all this sort of rubbish. And you find, people go out of their way where they find places that they can offload and they can dump and whatever. Absolutely ridiculous.
But people have lost connection with nature. They don't value it. They don't care what impact that will have. I don't know what the solution is, but fly tipping definitely
the solution is, Isabel, we build more prisons, bigger prisons, more cells within them, and we throw more yahoos into them.
Or rather than locking them up, get them out there cleaning it up.
That's a good idea.
Then they'll think about.
That's a very good idea.
Mindfulness.
And why does that not happen?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm at a loss as to why we don't do more of that.
Okay. Somebody I'd throw in prison, Paul Coit.
No.
But
I'd get him on community service.